There are approximately 20 million acres of grapes planted across the world. And each grapevine has its average lifespan of 25 years. So it's no surprise the grape is the world's #1 fruit crop. It is with this popular crop that we create a brew that is as old as written text can record: wine. But exactly how old is wine? Grapevine fossils have been found that date back to 60 million years ago, but the general idea is that the cultivation and drinking of wine started about 4000 BC. The first developments were around the Caspian Sea in Mesopotamia, near present-day Iran. Texts from tombs in ancient Egypt prove that wine was in use there around 2700 to 2500 BC. Wine was considered to be an upper-class drink and was only drank by royalty and priests. Starting about 1000 BC, the Romans made major contributions in classifying grape varieties and colors, as well as observing and charting ripening characteristics. They became skilled at pruning and increasing yields through irrigation and fertilization techniques. Wine, being a natural phase of spoilage, was discovered by accident, unlike beer and bread, which were human inventions. Today, the process of winemaking has improved both in method and cleanliness. While many people enjoy the flavor and effects of wines, not everyone is up to date with the process of winemaking in modern times.
The way wine's made, I picture just like old guys.
Honestly, I have no idea.
Balding with the big barrels all around.
I still think it's kind of like the olden days.
100 old, barrels of wine that just fermentate at a vineyard.
I know it used to be, they would get wine or get grapes and step on them, crush them. I don't know if that's what they still do. Crush them up in a barrel with their feet.
While the technique of stomping grapes still exists in some smaller wineries in parts of the world, that particular style of smashing grapes has been abandoned due to its unsanitary nature. There is undoubtedly an art behind each winemaker's technique, and good wine can be found in some of the most unusual places, such as Skeltoy Winery in Orengo, Missouri.
Started making wine when I was very young and kind of branched away and was making beer for a while and then went back to making wine, and fortunate to have spent a lot of time in Germany. My last assignment there was in a wine region, and I had a job that I got to visit a lot of the wineries and to see what they were doing there. Well, we decided that we were going to put up the winery. I can't say it's so much it was we, it was probably more me. Went out and decided to buy a little land and looked where we were going to plant grapes. And I think that first year my wife came out here one time. She wasn't really excited about the idea, but as we started going along, we started putting acre grapes in and then another acre grapes in at a time. And then we put up a little cabin out in the back. She and her father, who was 87 years old at the time, built that cabin. And by the time I got that cabin up, and she really liked it out here, I kind of had her hoodwinked into we were going to come out here and stay out here. And we kept putting in grapes, and then we put up the back half of the winery back there first, and then we decided to go ahead and put up a house out here, so we did that, and then came along and put in the front of it because we needed an area that we could sell the wine out of and for people to sit in and enjoy it, and then add the front end on that, and that's sort of how it came out.
Although the winery is relatively young, they have had time to develop an efficient method to create their wine, and it starts with the obvious.
Grapes is where we start all the wine from. And then after that, then they come in after the vineyard, they go into this little machine right here. This is my destemmer. This processes all the stems off my wine. So if it's a red wine, my grapes would come out the bottom, my stems would come out the front, and they go right into that big stainless steel tank over there, and they get into primary fermentation. And after about 2 weeks of primary fermentation, the grape skins and the juice go back into this thing right here to the left. And I squeeze it all out, and that goes into those big barrels you see over there, and that's secondary fermentation. Good grape growers make good wine. If you can grow good grape, you can make a good wine. There's a lot of analytical steps to winemaking. I'm kind of a New World winemaker. We're kind of taking some Stanford winemaker. I do a lot of analytical work. Everything gets analyzed. So it gets analyzed after it hits this destemmer, pH-TA, which is tartaric acid levels. It also gets an acetobacter count. It comes back to here, it goes into the bigger tanks after primary and goes into secondary, and it gets tested every 6 months to make sure everything's in order and we don't leave anything to chance. Everything's really done analytically.
The winemaker as well as owners have a long list of duties when it comes to day-to-day activities.
Every day starts off with 7 o'clock. Field hands get to my house. We have 2 guys that work all the fields. They come, we drive out here at Cultivoy, we make sure we need to get everything done. We clean up the winery. I send them out to the field to see what they're doing. Then I'll come in here, and as they're trimming vines and cleaning out rows, I'll start processing wine. So that's everything from cleaning out tanks to moving it around, processing wine, putting wine into barrels for the bottling line, or bottling wine, filtering wine, testing wine. So it's kind of an everything goes here.
How it's really hard to say for any given day, because every day brings something new here, because we may have had some type of damage that we have to deal with, or customers is a big thing, that we all of a sudden we get a call that we may have a large group coming in here and we got to prepare for that. We may have had plans that we were going to go out there and do some pruning or doing some sucker plucking out there, and we had a large heavy rain and it's muddy out there. There's just any number of things, or we may get a call that some inspector wants to come by, and of course we're jumping through cleaning up the back of the winery and cleaning up outside. There's obviously some science involved in this, and I can tell you from our earlier experiences, we are strictly along the art side of making wine, but once we started testing wine, the ability to start testing wine, the product improved. So when people talk about the art, the growing the grapes and stuff, there is art, there is an art to the degree of the style you make wine, but there is a lot of science involved in this too.
In another part of the Midwest, there is one of the oldest wineries in Kansas, Holyfield Winery.
Holyfield wines are an all-estate product, which means we grow all the grapes to make Holyfield wine. So we have 16 acres of wine grapes here at Holyfield. We started the vineyard in 1986. This year our growing season's starting a little bit earlier than normal because it's been unusually warm. So all the grapes that you see here are made into Holyfield wine. So the process is really everything starts out here, because this is where you make wine, is in the vineyard. So our goal is the highest quality fruit to make the highest quality wine. When I graduated from college, my dad wanted to plant some grapes. It was the year after I graduated from college, it was 1986, and my dad had always made wine, but he wanted to make it from something that he grew. So we put 400 grapevines in the ground, with the goal just being to make wine for ourselves. And really, I guess what got me into it is my dad, and I always tell people he just likes to dig holes, because every year he dug more holes and we had to plant more grapes.
I was still working a full-time job, and Michelle was still working a full-time job. So we worked in the evenings after work and on weekends. And till we, back in '94, wine wasn't as popular as it is now. And I'm sure our winemaking skills weren't what they are now. The history of the winery actually had just evolved, and we bought some equipment and stuff, and bottling equipment and cooling equipment.
Unlike most agriculture-related businesses, winemaking requires a more hands-on approach to harvest product.
As soon as they come off the vine, they're loaded onto a flatbed truck or trailer, and we take them to the cellar, crush, press, put them in a tank. So on the day you pick, crush, press, get it in a tank all on the same day. And then there's different ways to do, once you get into a wine cellar, it's not all pretty like it is out here. Wine cellars are more about pumps and hoses and lots of noise, especially during, crush. So if it's a white grape, it's pressed off immediately. Red grapes are kept on the skins, and the fermentation takes place in an open top fermenter. Fermentation is really just, the yeast are hungry, they're eating the sugars in the fruit and creating alcohol and CO2. And once you have ferment, and depending on the style of wine you're making, sometimes you'll make a dry wine, sometimes you'll kill the fermentation while there's still natural residual sweetness. A lot of winemaking is really clarifying the wine and getting the solids to settle out of it and making it pretty, so to speak.
Every year, you know, you have to do something a little different. Some years, if the grapes, if we have a real cold August or September, the acid comes in a little high and you have to reduce it, or if it's hot, you have to add some acidic to it in order to balance it out. Like I say, you always got to keep an open mind. My saying is, don't let the mind be like concrete, well mixed and permanently set.
You know, this isn't a 9-to-5 job, it's a lifestyle, you know, because everything you do revolves around it. You know, because being a farmer, you don't just walk away at the end of the day. You know, you have to manage what you're growing and things like that. So I would say you really need to be industrious, and you know, you need to make a high quality product. That's probably the most important thing.
You have to look forward to getting up in the morning and getting out in the field or down cellar and doing what needs to be done, which there's always something. You never have to, you're never without something that's got to be done.
You know, wine is all about regionality. And when you taste a Holyfield wine, you're tasting this. And that's something special. Winemaking, a lot of people have different styles. And that's the great thing about wine overall is, you know, we're not making Coca-Cola. And grapes, different grapes have different varietal characteristics. But from one year to the next, the Saval grape isn't necessarily going to taste the same. But like I said, we're not making Coca-Cola. What you're tasting, and that's what vintage is all about, is you're tasting the growing season in a bottle. So 2012 is going to represent, you know, really Mother Nature.
It doesn't matter where you go in the world. Wine always has a flavor unique to the area it is grown. It is because of this that wine can never have a single method of creation. Winemaking can truly be considered one of the oldest arts in human history.